I came in, I'm super excited about everything, obviously. And so like, I wanted to do a bunch of clubs and I wanted to be involved in a lot of things. And I took a lot of classes. And so like, you learn very quickly what you can handle, what you can't handle. And so like, it's okay, like to take on a lot and then like realize that you can't handle all of it.
Sorry.
I pointed out that I had won that plaque in 1970 something. The enterprising young ag teacher said, "Great, you're the Parley Pro coach." So I coached / judge for almost 10 years before I became a professional parliamentarian, and didn't know there was such a thing. So having done that, we got to the point I became credentialed in 2011, was my first credential from one of the professional organizations. Thought it was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life, and since then I have taken 7 more of the hardest tests that you'll ever take in your life. So there are 2 major credentialing organizations. One is the National Association of Parliamentarians, which is NAP. And are any of you guys NAP members? No? Okay. The second one is the American Institute of Parliamentarians. I am on the youth committee for the National Association of Parliamentarians. I am the national vice president of the American Institute of Parliamentarians and also their youth committee chair. And what it takes to be credentialed in each of these organizations is quite a bit different. Let's go through the National Association of Parliamentarians first. It requires first a membership test, which I am truly sure that all of you guys could pass today. If you can get 50% on the SAEP accreditation exam, you can pass the NAP membership exam. But that doesn't actually give you a credential. It just allows you to be a voting member of the National Association of Parliamentarians. The first level of credentialing, and I would recommend that if you choose to do this, that you do it in this order. I would go the NAP route first. The credentialing process for NAP is a 1,500 question test bank. And how many of you guys are familiar with any of Dunbar's materials on test questions? Okay, some of you. So the hardest question in Dunbar's manual is probably the average level in this test bank. So it really does make you know the nitty-gritty of Robert's rules. Once you pass that, the next credential, that test is 5 parts. One is research in the book, something similar to what I appears you're going to be doing today, where you look up the quotes in the book. And then the other 4 parts are broken up into different sections of the book, and there's anywhere from 425 to 300 questions in each of those individual test banks, totaling 1,500. And you can take those 1 part at a time. So when I got credentialed, you had to take the whole test in 1 day, but now they allow you to take different parts different days. The next credential that you would receive from NAP is a professional registered parliamentarian. And that involves, Dr. Foster, I believe, just completed this at our last annual or convention, biennial convention. So that involves writing an opinion, drafting bylaw amendments, serving as a parliamentarian, et cetera, et cetera. It's an in-person test. You can't take it remotely. And there's a certain amount of homework before, 2 days in the class, and then after that. Once you complete that, you are a professional registered parliamentarian, which is the highest designation that NAP offers. So now let's switch over to the American Institute of Parliamentarians. As a note of personal preference, I find American Institute of Parliamentarians preferable because it's a much smaller group and much more confined to people that actually practice as parliamentarians. So the American Institute of Parliamentarians has 2 designations. One is a CP exam. It's a 6-hour written exam on 4 different parliamentary authorities. How many of you knew that there were more parliamentary authorities than Roberts? Okay. So that test is very difficult. I typed nonstop as fast as my little fingers would go for 6.5 hours. And that's pretty tough. I thought it was the toughest exam I would ever take in my life. I recently completed my certified professional parliamentarian exam last January. It's a 2-hour test over the same 4 parliamentary authorities. It's done in person, half of which you preside, half of which you answer questions on theory. Now, I don't have an advanced degree or anything like that, but I've had several doctors, dentists, PhDs, attorneys take that test, and without fail, they all say that it was harder than any of their board exams that they had to take to get their medical or legal credentials. So that's where we're at there. So, but that's my plug for the 2 organizations. Let's talk about what it takes to be a professional parliamentarian. So, assuming you had those credentials, how many of you are going to not be financially strapped at all ever for the rest of your life by being an ag teacher?
What?
Not very many. My daughter's an ag teacher, so I understand exactly the pain. By becoming a credentialed parliamentarian, aside from the benefits of being a better coach if you want to coach your team, just as a side job this month, I've billed over $10,000. Okay, and that's probably in about 25 or 30 hours of work. So it's something that you guys could do as ag teachers to supplement your income, because I don't know what the starting salary is in Pennsylvania, but my daughter's been teaching 7 years and she's barely making $45,000. Okay, that's Arizona, so I apologize. But so what we do as professional parliamentarians, if you can coach a team or judge a team, you're probably close to being prepared to do that. They make a lot of really simple mistakes. They think that you can holler previous question from the back of the room and that ends debate. No votes, no nothing. We do basically 4 different criteria of what we do as a practice. There is the practice of serving as a parliamentarian, where you're actually sitting there next to the chairman, advising him on exactly what the rules of procedure. Now, I want you to understand that they don't usually hire a professional parliamentarian to tell them whether limit debate is debatable or not. It's very complicated and sometimes convoluted interpretations of their bylaws, their state law, or their governing documents. So that's one of the preferred methods. One of the things that I prefer most is actually serving as a parliamentarian. The other thing that we do a lot of is writing bylaws. You guys have the distinct advantage of being young enough to think in the Microsoft products, and whenever I type, I have to think about the Microsoft products. It's a subtle difference, but it's a huge advantage that you have. I often ask my daughter to edit documents for me, and then I ask her, how did she do that? She can't really tell me how she did it, but she did it. So I'm sure you understand the experience I'm talking about. All right, the other thing that we do a lot of is writing professional parliamentary opinions. Did Dr. Connors talk to you guys yesterday?
Yes.
Tuesday.
Yeah. So a lot of times you have competing parliamentary opinions. Dr. Connors and I were just on the opposite sides of an issue. And they're fun. It's an exercise in logic, and it pays pretty well. So the other thing that happens on occasion, and I'll tell you a story, there was a good senator, and I will not mention the state, who was speaking in front of a state political party convention. And he was being heckled vociferously from the audience. I mean, it was outright rude. they were cussing, they were et cetera, et cetera. The actual chairman, I was serving as the parliamentarian at the time, the actual chairman simply locked up and did not know what to do. The executive director looked over to me and says, all right, Al, you're up. You're presiding. The chairman appointed me the presider, and I turned to the gentleman who was being belligerent, and I said, sir, if you don't return to your seat, I'll have you removed from the meeting. And he quoted line and verse from Robert's Rules of Order that I did not have the power to remove him from the meeting because he was a member. And I responded with, sir, you are correct. Those in favor of having the member removed say aye. The whole audience thundered with ayes. And I said, I stopped right there and I said, this is probably not parliamentary correct. I stopped right there and said, sir, would you like me to take the negative vote or would you like to return to your seat? He tucked his tail between his legs and went back to his seat. Okay, so presiding is something that I enjoy. I would actually prefer to preside than serve as a parliamentarian. And you guys will have the same benefits because bottom line, you have experience watching teams and you don't have to think a lot about the verbiage that you have to say if you've coached a team. And then you guys aren't there yet, but you will be. So I'm just about out of time, but do you have any questions for me?
Oh my God.
No questions at all? I recognize some of you.
Thank you.
I was thinking for a second.
Go ahead.
What else do you do other than serving as a parliamentary specialist?
I run a real estate business. I've been doing that for 35 years, and honestly, I'm completely bored with it. So it runs pretty autonomously and makes a lot of money. So I'm not going to say I make more money as a parliamentarian than I do as a real estate agent. But I've sold, I don't know, 2,500 homes in my career. I'm pretty bored with it. So any other questions?
Did you attend the NAP convention this year?
Yes, that's the other thing I want to talk to you about. Yes, I did. Why do you ask?
I just wanted to ask you if there was anything, because Dr. Foster had shared a few stories from the convention this year, and I wanted to see if you had experienced anything interesting this year at the convention.
Well, I did, and the problem is I was rooming with the parliamentarian for the convention, so I have a little bit of a confidence level there that I have to keep some of that in confidence, so I can't share a lot of the inside baseball. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
One of the things that was really interesting is it took us 2.5 hours. These parliamentary conventions are the worst for demonstrating exactly how to do it right because it is a bunch of parliamentarians trying to show off their knowledge. That being said, brings me to my next point. I will have scholarships available to attend the AIP annual session, which is August 2nd through the 4th of 2018. It's in Louisiana. Now, my scholarship basically just contains waiver of the fees to attend the conventions, so you would have to provide your own hotel and travel. I am working on getting the same type of fee waiver to attend the NAP training conference, which is in Buffalo, New York. How far is Buffalo, New York from you guys?
6 hours.
So travelable by car, at least, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I want you to also understand that youth in this context in NAP and AIP means anybody under 45. Okay? So you guys would all still be eligible even if you graduated and got on to teaching. Send me an email if you would like to be considered for one of those positions, just letting me know that. So the AIP annual session is in New Orleans, Louisiana, the 2nd through the 4th of August. And that's a 3-day convention. The NAP Trading Conference is September 7th through the 9th in Buffalo. Let me know that you would be able to provide your own transportation, room and board, and I'll see what I can do about getting some of you guys fee waivers. Because you guys are going to teach parliamentary procedure in the classroom. And there's not a lot of other places that occurs. And I just got done writing 6 opinions in the last week, and I have 2 more to write this weekend. There's not enough parliamentarians out there that are young and nimble enough to do this kind of work. So I would recommend, for instance, if you wrote an opinion this weekend on your days off from teaching school and you made $1,200, would that help?
Yeah.
I'm sure it would. Helps me, you know. So any other questions?
What's it called? Public opinion.
Yeah.
What is it when you talk about writing an opinion? What exactly does that entail?
So essentially, you'll be presented with a group of questions from this happened, this happened. You'll have bylaw documentation. You'll have minutes, and they ran into a parliamentary. Well, I can share the one that I'm about to write. So they had a regular meeting where bylaws were proposed. Those bylaw amendments were postponed for to the next meeting for further research. They have a very low quorum requirement. That a small contingent called a special meeting and adopted a bunch of. So this body has an 1,800 person membership, and their quorum requirement is 7. So there was like 12 people at this special meeting. They adopted a bunch of bylaws that were outside the scope of the notice that they'd given. The chair ruled that because this other provision was pending for the next meeting, that it would conflict with that, and there is a little exception there for bylaw amendments. So I have to sort that mess out in writing for them and tell them exactly where they're at. It's kind of like a legal brief, only obviously we're not attorneys, so that's what it is. It's a lot of research, a lot of typing. Of course, we don't have to retype all the quotes from Roberts that you guys are going to have to look up here in about 15 minutes, because we just use the searchable Roberts and find the quotes and cut and paste. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I have a follow-up now. So
Okay.
once you write that opinion, I'm assuming whoever you're writing for gets to review what you wrote, and then do they follow what your opinion is?
They can or they cannot. I mean,
Okay.
same thing when you're serving as a parliamentarian. You can only offer advice. You're just a consultant. You can't make the rulings for the chairman.
Okay.
So it's common that our advice is disregarded, usually to their detriment. It always costs them more money, like in this case that I just told you about. Had they consulted me in advance, I could have gone there for the 2-hour meeting, and it would have cost them a lot less money excuse me, than for me to try to sort it out now. So they don't have to follow it, but most of the time when they don't, it gets them in trouble. This particular one's an easy one because the bylaw amendment proposed was to reduce the dues, and the motion that they passed at the meeting was actually to raise the dues, which is clearly outside the scope of the required notice for that meeting. Any more questions?
Good.
No, I think we're good.
So how many of you think you might be able to or willing to attend one of those 2 conventions? Maybe Dr. Foster can put something together through Penn State to get some assistance to get you guys there. I will tell you that you will be the strong minority as far as age class.
What about Foster again?
Yeah, what about
But you're also, okay, so it was very common at this last convention that we would be having drinks with 3 authors of the book who refused to talk about the book while you're meeting with them, but still. Okay, any other questions?
So you said that we would be a minority in the sense of age, but what about gender? Because here in Ag Ed at Penn State, we're really heavy on the females. What's a convention demographic look like with that?
I would say that there's not, if anything, there are more females than males, but I would say it's pretty close.
Okay, that's interesting.
I've not suspected that.
What did you say,
Okay. Anything else? We're just about out of time.
Al, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good afternoon.
I will. It's actually still morning here.
Oh. Well, have a good brunch.
There you go. Thanks, guys.
Bye.